Well, I'm ready to start going over this with the MEK. It's all shrunk down. Did that last night, of course. And I've got my little work cart cleaned off. I got everything cleaned off of it except the MEK. I've got a couple rags there. I've been using those invisible gloves type of stuff, invisible gloves, and now some PR88 for everything to keep my hands from getting damaged, getting the solvent into my bloodstream so much. But since I'm going to be just using strictly MEK this time, just solvent, I've got some of these gloves here. They're solvent-proof gloves. They do get a little sticky and the MEK does affect them, but it doesn't tear them up as bad as the nitrile gloves or the vinyl gloves, which it eats up pretty fast. So there's a couple of little things that I did wrong or that I would do different here now than what I did before, because I had this one big slit that I had to make in there to fit that around that grab handle, and I made a patch for it that I glued on with polybrush. I tried to glue the patch on the inside, but with the baggage compartment right there and everything, I couldn't really get in there to put that patch on the inside, so I wound up putting it on the outside. Well, if I had it to do over again, I would put the patch on with polytack instead of polybrush. I think polytack makes a little bit stronger bond, quite a bit stronger bond than the polybrush. And the other thing that I did is I used some pre-shrunk fabric on that. And I think if I did it to do over again, I would just use regular fabric on there instead of pre-shrunk. If it's glued on with polytack, it'll stay better and it'll hold the seam together better, I think. The polybrush, when I started to get hot and stuff, the seam started pulling apart underneath it. So it's still going to be okay, but I think it would have been better if I would have done it with polytack and a regular piece of cloth instead of pre-shrunk. The other thing was up here on this wing root, I had two pieces here. This is the piece, the main fabric for the airframe that was on there, and then I patched in a second piece of fabric here, and I didn't glue these two together before I started shrinking. We got all of the fabric in the airframe there washed down with MEK and clean rags. So I went over everything, top, both sides, and bottom, and that gets off any oils from the fingerprints and contaminants that get on it while I was working. Also, I'm a little bit sloppy on my application and stuff, so I wind up getting gobs of polytack here and there and smears of it. I tried using that method like I see on videos, and one of my friends showed me thinning the polytack down with MEK and spreading it on, and then putting the fabric down and then putting the polytack on top of that, and that just kind of made a mess in places. So anyway, I used the MEK to clean up all of the lumps and bumps and stuff from the polytack and all the dirt and stuff off of it. It should be good and clean. I'll wait now until it flashes off real good. I'm going to mix up some polybrush, put a coat of polybrush on everything. I've got an air filter up there, Grizzly shop filter, air filter, hanging air filter that we got a couple of years ago. My wife uses this for wood shop projects part of the time, and something to help keep the air clean in here. I had it on, going full. The door to the basement is open. That's a 4-foot wide door, and I've got a fan in there blowing out to keep the fumes and stuff moving out of here, and they didn't build up too bad. I got a couple of these cheap organic materials air filters. They're supposed to work for the MEK and stuff, and it works okay. These are a couple bucks from China. I got 4 of those, so I used one of those. And then I was wearing my gloves. I always had trouble cleaning my parts, my spray guns and painting equipment, whatnot. Even with the lacquer thinner, it always just eats up the nitrile gloves and wind up holding more solvent in them than you get out. So I was looking for something to use for that, and these Solnet Ansol gloves are supposed to be chemical resistant. Well, I got some of these to use for cleaning my paint guns, and I used this for the MEK, and it worked. It finally started breaking down at the last. You can see how the stuff on the fingers got all wrinkled up. They're cloth lined, and then with whatever this stuff is on the outside, anyway, they started breaking down. This one never did penetrate, but it did start getting sticky, and a couple of little pieces of green came off and got on the fabric, but I got them off okay. The right hand one, or the left hand one, got a little hole in it, and it started leaking MEK. You know, I just took it off, figuring it's probably better to have it so it can evaporate off rather than staying in the glove and staying against the skin. Well, anyway, that's all done. Now I'll be ready to mix up some polybrush. I took this old MEK can, cut it off, and I can put the polybrush in there. Since I'll be using quite a bit of it here to do this whole airframe, instead of I just using the quart paint mixing cups for doing the control surfaces, and that worked fine for that, but it'll take quite a bit of polybrush to do this whole thing. So I made up this can, and I went down and got a 3-inch wide brush, so I have a little wider brush for applying that. Maybe I should have got a 4-inch one, I don't know, but 3-inch one is better than a 2-inch one. So I'll mix up some polybrush and let that MEK evaporate. It's pretty much gone now, so I can start putting polybrush on this airframe.